As the storm fades, cracks are already showing at Fairmont Crest. Allison escapes during a 7-minute communications blackout inside the tunnel. Chelsea is targeted again, and at the main gate lies a strip of leather engraved with a hand-drawn map straight to the greenhouse. The cameras loop old footage, the fire alarm screams and dies, a 90-second power cut hits, an access card vanishes, and on Chelsea's table sits a 30-minute hourglass, an open declaration of war. Today, we'll retrace the entire timeline, decode the signature, expose the security gaps, and ask the big question: who on the inside opened the door for Allison? This is no longer a ransom case, it's a debt being collected. If you want to know who's pulling the strings, why Chelsea is always in the crosshairs, and which decisions will push everyone to the edge, stay to the end. Every detail is a clue. The storm on the night Allison vanished from the prisoner transport felt like a ritual banishing everything Fairmont Crest has always tried to hide beneath a silk cloth: the truth about old debts that were never paid. 7 lost minutes inside the tunnel were enough to turn the steel shackle into a cold, clean slice, leaving behind the metallic odor and the uneasy hollow that has long lurked beneath the ivy-wrapped arcades. By morning, the neighborhood woke to tight whispers, to messages spreading like fire through dry grass: Chelsea was targeted again. But this time, nothing wore the shape of ransom. The clues were arranged like a personal indictment, as if someone wanted to burn away the ceiling so the community could see the rusty beams within. The security feed looped footage from 48 hours earlier, brazen as a mishung painting. The East Wing fire alarm screamed and then drowned itself in silence. Every detail betrayed an intimate acquaintance with the layout of the defenses. A gift sat against the main gate, a strip of leather, cut into its hide, and a crude, hand-drawn map to the greenhouse. Did not only stir the memory of a name erased from the administrative ledger, it jabbed at those who understood the power games here: a greeting from the past, a seal on a betrayal that never got called by its right name. And among all those pretending non-involvement, anger began to tap its rhythm: the slow burn of people who compromised for safety, the flare of those who placed their trust in the wrong hands, the cold blaze of someone who had calculated every exit route long ago. Kat stood at the edge of the lawn facing the greenhouse, nails digging into her palm until she tasted the metal of blood in her throat, stomach knotting at the recollection of the confident choice she made last year, accepting the sealed-off wine cellars after the theft, ignoring the question of who sent a copy of the master key to her mailbox on the same night Chelsea was first targeted. That night she chose silence to protect the portrait of stability in the lead-up to a fundraising season, chose to tread across her own suspicion because an entire web of relationships was invested in the perfect image of Fairmont Crest. Now the glowing powder arrows down to the wine tunnel shredded the wallpaper, illuminating that choice in a cold, blue glow. Kat's anger didn't explode aloud, it spread outward, tight in her chest, clinging like the antiseptic scent still lingering in the abandoned villa at number 17 when security stormed in and found nothing but tape residue and a pinhole camera nested inside a stone bust. That anger found its name when her eyes fell on the sand timer counting 30 minutes on Chelsea's table, the falling grains ticking off every flimsy justification she'd used to lull herself that everything would be fine. If the police were called, the game would change levels. The threat was written to everyone, but Kat read the verdict inside it for herself. How many times had she changed levels of priority, stacking collective interest above the truth of a friend? Danny refused to linger at the margins. The black SUV slipping out the south gate at 21:23 while guards were dragged lakeside by a false alarm yanked back her memory of the maintenance calendar emailed to the admin group the week before, a schedule too perfectly aligned with the moment the access card was deactivated. She dismissed such small anomalies because she had been drunk on a new philanthropic media strategy, determined to prove Fairmont Crest a rare mirror of responsible wealth. Now the mirror fractured along the hairline cracks she had noticed but waved aside. The photo of Chelsea tied to a chair that hit her phone at 21:26 slapped the smile off every moral slogan she'd once hung in her head, the one she used to persuade herself she stood on the right side. The antiseptic sting inside number 17 made Danny suspect someone trained in clinical habits of erasure, and bait or not set ablaze the memory of a personnel file pulled from the system a year ago with a plump non-disclosure payout. Danny found herself envying the earlier version of her who believed every crisis could be solved with a precise press release and a warm, well-lit fundraiser. Now she understands some debts are unpayable by money, they can be paid only by exposure and its price. Allison, though absent from any camera still, hovered like a line of chemical ink only legible in the right light. Her silence during those 7 tunnel minutes did not narrate escape, it wrote a different chronicle, the patience of someone who learned the heartbeat of her opponents, the way to bend protective habits into a key. Some call her a sacrificial pawn moved by an invisible others insist she is the ghost of an old wrong the neighborhood boxed up, sealed, and archived. Whatever the answer, her return stripped the linens off compromise. By killing the west perimeter, opening the master key cabinet, ringing the victim's bell with a deadbolt latched from the inside, she forced everyone to face one question: who handed her the keys? Who penciled the maintenance schedule to engineer a corridor of absence? And whose debt is being collected, debt born from which hairline crack in this community's history? Chelsea was missing, yet her absence was the loudest voice. The staged images, the emptied house that kept only the smell of antiseptic and 3 strips of tape, the pinhole camera in the statue's skull, the whole scene turned Chelsea into a mirror reflecting collective shame. No one said it aloud, but everyone knew. Last time she survived, promises made in a conference room got poured out with the wine the next night, favors were called in to preserve a peaceful surface, powerful fingerprints were pressed over the throat of the truth until it stopped moving. This time isn't about money, it's about debt. Shoved Kat and Danny into the same cramped carriage, either mine down to the root of old compromises, or watch the final grain drop in Chelsea's timer and turn every regret into late decor. Between 21:12 and 21:19 the minutes thickened like knots cinching tight, a 90-second blackout, the master cabinet pried open, one access card gone, the west fence dead, then the hookcast text: Chelsea fell at the greenhouse, dragging Kat into a sealed wine tunnel. Danny received the photo at 21:26, security hit number 17 not long after and ate a sterile emptiness. At 22:03, the doorbell shrieked at Chelsea's home despite the double lock, a 30-minute hourglass set neatly on the table, and a slip of paper wedged beneath the frame announcing a new game. Stitched together, the sequence read like a plotted blueprint, its calibration unnerving, as if someone measured each character's stress fractures, knowing Kat would follow luminous powder instead of calling the police. Knowing security would thin out when a lake alarm chirped, knowing Danny would thread the maintenance schedule to card data, knowing the community's memory of was vague enough to kindle a fever of suspicion. Within that blueprint, each person slammed into a turn you don't reverse from. To admit there's an insider on the board means conceding that prior pledges of protection are scrap. To unearth sealed files means dragging legal fallout and relational collapse into the light no one is ready for. To remain quiet is to align yourself with the falling sand. Kat's anger hardened into the cold resolve of a surgeon: redraw the power map. She no longer cared about the embarrassment of shattering a few faces on the council. She began cross-matching door logs, maintenance minutes, and those midnight emails coded with bland phrases like optimize costs and adjust procedure. Each file she opened sliced into the fat of collective complacency and exposed the most sensitive nerve: who truly controls the keys. She recalled last month's meeting when she pressed to replace the card system and was stalled by budget limits, even as the landscaping fund ticked up. Sensible then, even harmless in a stormy season. Now that vote flared like a warning lamp on an overheating panel. Who set the wrong priority, and was it really wrong? Danny, meanwhile, forced herself to grind every pretty illusion of her role as the community's storyteller into dust. No more crisis management by soothing lines. She drafted a list of everyone with eyes on the maintenance calendar and cross-referenced devices pinging cell towers around the lake during the false alarm. With each name she weighed, her anger changed temperature, from flare to frost, from a need to expose instantly to the appetite to anchor each shard of proof in a framework no one could slither out of. She didn't merely want the accomplice, she wanted motive. Money, personal vendetta, or the tangled cord between and projects that made a few people too powerful to question? She counted the cost of flipping the lights on. Move too fast and someone collapses, children get dragged in, houses sell, careers burn. Move too slow and the hourglass on the table becomes Exhibit A that she chose pretext over action again. On the periphery, questions soaked the plaster like creeping damp. Who is in this new round? A physician forced out under a silencing agreement, a two-faced board member, or simply a forged signature Allison wields to return humiliation to those who made her the only one who paid? Was the Southgate SUV the real transport or a decoy thrown to scatter resources? Where was the photo of Chelsea taken, before or after the hourglass was set? And how did the bell ring if the inner latch was thrown? Does someone hold a third key, or is there a mechanism only a former architect of the security system would know? These questions are not just hooks to tease an audience, they are blades balanced against loyalty, forcing choices between friendship and truth, between reputation and a life. The battle of schemes therefore plays out not on a street but inside spreadsheets, timestamp logs, and uncomfortable memories pushed to speak their names. Kat decides to run an after-hours reconciliation of data off the shared system, using an old-fashioned offline key dismissed as obsolete. Danny digs up the rejected communications plans to see where ethics was recruited as curtain cloth. Each time she finds one, she tags it like dried blood. Down the hall, a young guard signs his end-of-shift report with lips pressed thin, eyes slipping past the question of those 90 blank seconds. He isn't a villain, but he chooses a paycheck over a quiet conscience. That choice scales with dozens, hundreds of other small decisions that paved a clear lane for Allison to saunter across the west fence and leave a community imprisoned by its own cleverness. As the last grains jut and hesitate, Kat sees how anger unstructured becomes a blaze that eats everything. She strips each strand of feeling from her decisions, turns the tremor in her hands into a checklist, frees every card temporarily even if traffic snarls, rebuild the timeline independent of the official report, extract the doorbell logs from Chelsea's home, reopen the file despite non-disclosure. Danny keeps her role as the one who will speak when needed, but this time she will not butter the truth with beautiful language. She drafts words like anchor hooks so that when dropped, the facts cannot be dragged by a gust of agreeable opinion. They know that once they move, they will wake the beast sleeping under the foundation's investments, relationships, nameless funds. They know they may lose more than a reputation. They also know that if they do nothing, they will lose Chelsea in a sense wider than life. They will lose the woman who has become the measure of how much humanity is left here. Somewhere, footsteps leave no echo across the greenhouse threshold, slipping past a wind tunnel seal affixed the wrong way. It might be Allison, it might be someone happier in the dark. A question hangs like chalk dust in the first shard of morning light: which debt is being collected, a life once abandoned, a reputation once sold, or the bill owed by a community that learned to trade truth for safe appearances? Is the hand behind every shortcut, or only a collective mirror where each of them is a shard of the mastermind? Was the hourglass placed to count down toward rescue or judgment? And when it stalls on the last grain, who will have the courage to set a palm on the rim and tip it over, not to delay, but to reorder the priorities that marched them to the edge today? And with that, tonight's hourglass has hit its final grain, but the story at Fairmont Crest is only just beginning. Allison vanished like a fork of lightning splitting the sky, swallowing every trace into a 7-minute pocket of darkness. Chelsea is dragged back into the eye of the storm, and the mark pins a cold tack into the power map of the entire enclave. The security gaps aren't mere technical glitches, they are the product of priorities chosen, silent nods given, and all the times people lulled themselves into believing peace was real. Kat and Danny have rearranged the pieces, yet empty spaces remain on the table. Was the SUV that left the south gate the rail transport or a decoy? Did the doorbell ring with the deadbolt set from inside because of an insider's signal or a trick by someone who once authored this system? And is the leather strip carved the fingerprint of a single puppeteer or a mirror reflecting several familiar faces? As dawn stretches the greenhouse's shadow, the sealed wind tunnel shows a misfit seam that was never up to code, as if someone deliberately left an entry for the next round. In the logs, the 90-second blackout still looks like a clean incision. In the personnel files, maintenance updates align in ways that defy coincidence. In the community's memory, unpaid moral debts are finally hearing a knock at the door. If this debt isn't money, then what is being collected? Reputation, truth, or a life once treated as expendable? If is only a mask, what will emerge when the last coat of paint peels away? And when Kat and Danny choose to flip on every light, are they ready to pay with their own privileges and relationships? In the next video, we'll unlock each layer of keys, trace the timestamp of the missing access card, and cross-match camera dead zones with real-world movement around number 17. For now, hold on to every hypothesis and ask yourself, who was the only one not panicking when the hourglass began to fall, because they already knew exactly where it would stop?